Take the lock washer off, throw it in your parts bin. They're more trouble than what they're worth. They're not required. And another thing on the actual washer here, these are stamped washers, so one edge will actually have a little burr on it and it will be sharp. Now you don't want to put it with the burr down because it actually will grab on the trunnion casting, because I did not do anything to clean up this cast here. So you just want to make sure that when you put the washer on, make sure you put it with the rounded side down, if I can keep my fingers on it, and you'll notice that that will give you a better operation for when you go to adjust. And by doing that, with the lock washers on there, I believe I had to run these out about 3 turns before I actually had them loose to where I could actually attempt originally to move the table with the trunnion slide. By taking those off, I believe maybe a half to 1 turn, it's loose enough in my first test. That's all you have to back it off, and then you can adjust your table. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put this one back together, and then we'll start mounting and adjusting this, and then we'll see where we're at. Now, one more thing, I keep saying I'm going to stop the video. I did address the top edges of the table here. There were some burrs here along the miter slot. I just took some sandpaper on a sanding block and just ran down here at about a 45-degree angle just to kind of soften that edge, as well as just kind of ran around the top just for, you know, anything that might catch your hands when you have them in the way. So now I will stop the video. I will put this together. I'll be back with you, and I'll show you what I'm going to do that I haven't done yet and where we're at on this particular setup. Okay, here we are back at the grinder. What I just did was drive my pins back in like I said I was going to do after cleaning out those holes. Now once you've surfaced 2 of your trunnions, you want to go ahead and just put them back on with the supplied washers and nuts. Now what I'm doing here is just leaving them finger tight at the moment, and we will be tightening these up here in a minute. The camera angle is going to be a little bit difficult to see what I'm doing, but I'll try to explain it in such a way where you won't really need the videography for this. So what I'm doing here is just eyeballing the trunnions to make sure that they're both about equally spaced front to back, and I'm going to slide the table up into these guide pins here. Now you'll notice, you may not be able to see it, but there's a lot of paint here on the side of this particular surface. I'm going to take a small wire brush on a Dremel and I'm going to knock this paint off because it's kind of sticky. I'll put a little bit of 3-in-1 or maybe some whey oil on it or something like that, just a light coat, just to give it a little bit of sliding medium. So with that being said, you tilt the table up at about a 45-degree and you start with the bottom guides, and now they're going in, and as you rotate the table it will slide right up in there. Now these are only finger tight, but I can already tell that things are happening. So the next thing you want to do is start with the front nut underneath side, and I'm going to get a spacing here, tighten that up a little bit more. I just want to make sure, you know, I pretty much use 8 to 10 on the down angle, so I'm not too concerned about the up. The only time I would really go up is if I was dressing the wheel with a diamond pointed tool, which I will probably address that later on the proper procedure to dress the wheels, and a fixture that I'm actually going to make to hold the diamond point that'll run down this miter slot. So you want to get as close to the wheel as you can without the wheel touching in your range of motion. So in my case, it looks like about between 1/8 and 1/4 inch. Now I'm just lightly tightening that up, and since it's wanting to fall off on the back finger tight, as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up a little bit with the wrench, just so I can get the table held in place. Okay, so now the table's held in place and they're just snug. Now the next thing we're going to do is put in the lockdown bolts, front and back, minus the lock washer. Throw those in your bin, as I already said. Make sure you have the washer on there in the correct orientation. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in. I'm going to run this one up just till it starts snugging up. I'm going to do the same with the back one. Now the back you'll probably have the worst time trying to see. It's pretty much a mirror image of the front. Okay, so with them like this, I'm going to go ahead and loosen these up just a little bit. And you can see, or not, the trunnion is not quite touching the casting there. So I'm just going to tighten this up. Sometimes it's easier said than done. There we go. Okay. I'm going to tighten that up fairly snug for the moment, just to make sure it's locked. I'm going to do the same thing with the back. Now the table is loose, as you can see. Now what I'm going to do is take a small square and I'm going to zero the table to the wheel. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, it's just kind of an easy reference point. So just loosen them up just enough to where you can move them. Adjust your table. And there I have it square to the wheel. Now I'm really going to lock the trunnion in on the front. And I'm going to do the same thing on the back. Now we're still able to move the table, which kind of messed up my spacing here, but I know I need it about right there. So what I'm going to do is tighten up the front trunnion, and the front meaning front to you, not the front to the machine. I'm trying to do this in perspective that you're actually watching it. Now I'm not going very tight with it, I'm just snugging it up so it won't move under its own weight. Now what we need to do is square the table to the wheel. And by table I mean the miter slot. We want the miter slot to run straight, parallel to the wheel. Now to do that, because this wheel is not true, and I would do this regardless if the wheel was true or not, I'm going to take a black Sharpie and I'm just going to make a mark on the edge of my wheel. Now the reason for that is I'm going to take a measurement here, I'm going to rotate the wheel 180, and I'm going to make a measurement at the back referencing that same mark. We'll figure out where the table is in relation to the slot and the wheel. So to do that, I'm just going to use a digital caliper here. This doesn't have to be entirely accurate, it just needs to be pretty close. So I'm just going to use it as a depth gauge here. I'm sticking the corner into the edge of the slot, and I'm just easy enough to touch my mark. I'm going to go ahead and lock that in just so I can read what it is, which is 1.3345. I'm going to rotate the wheel to the back, getting my mark where I need it. And I can just see visually now, I'm not even going to bother measuring this, that I am about an 1/8 inch away from the stone at that point, stone to the edge of the slot. So I'm going to take a soft hammer, which unfortunately is not right here with me, so would you hand me that hammer please? Thank you, my trusty assistant.